Welcome back. When we last left our story, Polly and Doris were talking. Polly picked up her drink in defiance and began to pace. "Listen, Polly, you're just killing Helen." "Killing her?" She shook her head as if to dismiss everything she was hearing. "Yes, Polly, killing her. She's constantly tired, constantly trying to figure out what to do about you, and she's trying to keep up her work at Doll." Polly rolled her eyes. "See, there's an example right there," Doris said. "An example of what, Doris?" Polly asked, somewhat exasperated. "Of what you're doing to Helen. The people at DAL are important to her. What does it matter to you if she likes going there? Hell, the paper honored her for it." Okay. Whatever makes her happy," Polly said dismissively. "I make her happy, Polly," Doris insisted. Polly spit her drink only partly into her glass as she choked on Doris's words. "Polly, this has to stop. You have to accept me as a part of Helen's life. You just have to." Doris heard herself begging on Helen's behalf. "If you don't, the two of you are over. If she has to choose, and she's about to, she will choose me." Polly looked directly at Doris. "Do you really think that in the end Helen will choose you over me?" "Ha! I know she will." "So do you," Polly insisted. "So why force her to do it?" Polly wasn't entirely sure Doris was wrong. "I'm not forcing her to do anything," she exclaimed. "You're forcing her in so many ways. I'm trying to help you, you fool. I'm trying to help both of you." "We don't need your help," Polly insisted again. The malice in Polly's eyes made Doris sit back. She swallowed and continued. "You do, if you want to save the friendship. Doris, you really think that my friendship with Helen can end? We are, how does Lillian put it, legendary." Polly looked at Doris, self-assured. "She's just about had it, Polly," Doris replied calmly. "You sound like you think you know Helen's thoughts." Polly took a drink. "I do," Doris responded. "My God, what is wrong with you, Doris? Why don't you just leave? Get out of Helen's life and get out of this town. Let her find herself again. She's lost. You have somehow just swallowed her whole." "Polly, I'm so sorry you feel that way. Would you like me to tell you what exactly happened? Would you like me to tell you about when we met? How close we were just as soon as we saw each other?" Doris's patience was ebbing fast. Stop, Doris. I won't hear any of this. You said we had to talk, so here I am. And all I'm hearing is you trying to make all of this okay. This can never be okay. Never. It's unnatural. It's wrong. It's disgusting." At this point, Helen walked in. "What? Polly, what are you doing here? Again? Doris, are you all right?" "Yes, dear," Doris answered, trying to resume calm. "Polly is here because I invited her. We're fine." "No, we're not fine," Polly boomed. "This was a mistake and I'm leaving. Helen, I'll call you later." Polly stormed out the door. Doris gave in to her tears. "What on earth did that witch do?" Helen asked immediately. Nothing, Helen. At least nothing new." Doris sat down. Helen said as well, "I'm just overwhelmed." "Did you really invite her over?" Helen couldn't quite believe it. "Yeah," Doris looked up smiling, "but first I threatened to track her down in public if she didn't talk to me. She agreed to meet here." They both laughed. "Really, Doris? Why?" Helen asked. "I just wanted to try. I'm sorry. I went behind your back." "Again." "Yes, again. I won't repeat it." "Please don't, Doris. I need to trust you." "You can trust me, sweetie. I'm telling you everything. I just thought maybe I could talk some sense into her, but I utterly failed. I asked her to the party, the moving-in party, housewarming, whatever we're calling it," Doris said hesitantly. "Why on earth would you do that?" Helen asked. "I hope she didn't accept." Actually, we got off track. "I bet she would accept if you asked her and assured her it's a going-away party for me." "Don't even joke about that, Doris." Chapter 25. Doris wasn't native to Tennessee. She grew up in Ohio, and that's where she found a job as housekeeper for Grace and Richard Matthews and their 5-year-old daughter, Jessica. It was 1950. Doris was nervous and about to walk into a situation she could never have anticipated. It only took a day or two to see it. The way Grace spoke to Jessica was just too quick, too frustrated. Everything that Jessica did or couldn't do irritated Grace. But Richard, that was a different story. He doted. Jessie was his angel, and he was concerned. "I'm worried, Doris," Richard said one morning out of the blue. "Mr. Matthews? Worried about my work? Have I done something wrong?" Doris asked, afraid she was about to lose her job. "No, Doris, your work is fine. I like the way you spend so much time with Jessica. She needs that." Doris thought he sounded sad. "And," Richard lowered his voice, "she'll need it even more when we leave." "Leave?" Doris put down her work, somewhat alarmed. "Yes, Doris, leave. I'm leaving Grace, and I'm taking Jessie. You see how Grace treats her. Jessie can't stay here. I need you to come with me to help take care of her. Would you do that?" He was pleading now. "You plan to leave your home and take your child, and you want me to come with you? That's kidnapping. And Mr. Matthews, how would that look? I mean, you and me leaving like that together?" Doris whispered. "I don't care about any of that, Doris. She's my child," Richard said loudly, then repeated more quietly, "She's my child. The law won't see it that way, and Mrs. Matthews certainly won't see it that way," the voice of reason reminded him. "She'll be glad to get rid of her," was all Richard said. "Oh, I don't think it's that bad, do you? Jessica is her child. She's just a bit unhappy." Doris felt uncomfortable giving advice to her employer, but he seemed to be asking. "And she takes it out on Jessie. You don't hear her at night when she's really tired. She's abusive, Doris, just abusive. I try to smooth things over, but Jessie's smart. She knows something's wrong, and she's beginning to be afraid. We have to go. I have to get her away from this." "Mr. Matthews, should you go to the police? Get a court order so you can take her legally, at least temporarily?" "Temporarily," Richard started to interrupt. "Temporarily," Doris stopped him, "while you figure all of this out." "And how long will that take?" "A while. But yes, I'll come with you and take care of Jessica. Of course I will. We'll get her away from all this. Just don't involve me in a kidnapping." They tried. Between his own testimony and the reports of neighbors, Richard got a very temporary restraining order. He didn't have a lot of time to file for divorce, sue for custody, and prove he had a reason to keep his daughter away from her mother. In the end, the courts ruled in Grace's favor. The possibility that Richard and Doris were simply running off together with the child was brought up over and over, and Grace was Jessie's mom. She was the pinnacle of calm reason in the courtroom. Richard was terrified to see her act so counter to her personality. He decided that he had to run, and he, Doris, and Jessie left the next morning. By the time Doris met Helen, Richard had remarried, and with his new wife and Jessie, he had simply disappeared. Doris had married Samuel Martin, and after 3 years left for Tennessee with her son Gordon, but not with Samuel. Polly loved the library and spent a great deal of time there. She found the silence comforting. It was not like the hollow silence at home. This was a silence with others to smile at and to greet. Polly was walking through the 2 rows of tables in the middle of the reading room when she saw it. Doris Hardy. "Oh my God," Polly said. "Shh," she heard from Agnes at the reception desk. Sorry. Are you done with that newspaper?" she quietly asked the young man who had left it on the table and headed for the shelves. "Yes, actually. Didn't have what I needed." Polly started to read. Brogdon, Ohio. Jessica Matthews, 5-year-old daughter of Grace and Richard Matthews, has disappeared and is believed to have been kidnapped by her father. Jessica has been living with both parents until their estrangement. Mr. Matthews was able to acquire a temporary restraining order against Mrs. Matthews after reporting several events involving mental and near physical abuse of the child. After filing for divorce, Mr. Matthews sued for custody. Neighbors reported loud arguments coming from the house and crying, but in the end he was denied. After a failed appeal, Mr. Matthews took the child and fled the vicinity. Doris Hardy, Mr. Matthews' Negro housekeeper, was believed to have played a role in the kidnapping. She has disappeared as well, and as of this writing, has not been found. Polly couldn't believe what she was reading. Doris? She was from Ohio, and her maiden name was Hardy. This has to be her, Polly thought. Does Helen know? She had to wonder. She sat for a long time. Kidnapping? Finally, she called Helen's house, hoping that Doris would answer. Doris, she asked. Yes, this is Doris. Polly? Doris answered in surprise. Yes, this is Polly. Can we talk? Polly continued defiantly. Why? Doris asked. Can you come by, was all that Polly said. To your house? You want me to come to your house? This was enough to make Doris curious, if not concerned. Yes, I need to ask you about something, Polly continued. Something new or something same old, Doris asked with some irritation. She wasn't looking forward to one more session of You Have to Leave. Oh, this is new, Doris. This is all new, she hung up. Helen was out, so Doris left a note and headed to Polly's. When she arrived, Polly had set out coffee and pastries. Come in, Doris, Polly said with a smile that Doris neither recognized nor trusted. Sit down. I have breakfast for you. Doris looked at the pastries. Are they safe? Polly laughed and helped herself. So, Polly, Doris asked, sipping her coffee, why am I here? Polly looked at Doris with delighted anticipation. You are here, my dear, to say goodbye. Doris stood, put down her coffee, and headed toward the door. Polly followed and stood literally in her path. Sit down, Doris. You're going to hear this. Polly's eyes were shining, wide open, insistent. Doris felt she had no choice but to return to her chair. Okay, Polly, what is this? She asked, somewhat less than confidently. Polly sipped her coffee and took a bite of pastry. Finally, she looked at Doris and nodded at a piece of paper on the table. Take a look at that, she said. As Doris read, she felt herself pale. How many years ago? And how on earth? Polly, where? How? Was all she could say. At the library, dear, in the newspaper, just sitting right there on the table for everyone to see. That is you, isn't it? Doris Hardy, maid to the Matthews family of Ohio, Polly asked, smiling. Yes, Polly, that's me. But that was such a long time ago, and it was so important to get that child away from that woman. She was abusive, Polly, Doris began to explain. That's all news, Doris, but this is going to be new news to Helen. I assume she doesn't know, Polly asked. She knows, Polly. Helen knows everything, and she understands, Doris replied calmly. She understands. She understands. Polly was on her feet. Yes, I told her all about it years ago. We don't keep secrets. Polly slammed down her cup. You leave. Get well out of Dysonville, or I will talk to the Ohio police. I don't believe there's a statute of limitations on kidnapping. Why? Why would you do that to Helen? Doris asked, trying to steady her voice. For Helen, Polly replied emphatically. Doris stood to leave. I won't wait too long, Doris, Polly warned her. Doris turned. Polly, can you wait until after the party? Can you at least do that much? Polly rolled her eyes. Yes, Doris, I can do that for Helen. Then you will do so much more for her by getting completely out of her life. Yes, Polly, I will, Doris lied. If you'll let us get through the party, I'll leave. You win. I never wanted to compete with you, but you win. Chapter 26. Alice noticed big doings on the lawn. Mom, this isn't my birthday, don't overdo. The housewarming for Alice, Joe, and Lil had renewed Helen's spirits. Overdue? My daughter is moving into my house with Joe, one of my favorite people in the world, and Miss Lil. I'm going to celebrate. Where's Joe with my beer? He called. He just left the bar. No worries, Alice assured her. All right, then all is set, Helen glanced around. All is set. Let's have a drink, Alice suggested. Yes, absolutely. Here's Doris. Doris was radiant, smiling. She had made a decision, a horrible and perfect decision. Polly's discovery had settled everything. She turned to Alice. I'm so glad you're moving in. Well, Alice continued, I just brought 3 people into your house, so that's very generous of you. Oh, honey, Doris hugged her. It's a huge house. I hope we get to see you enough. Don't worry about that, Lillian interrupted. Dad will abuse the kitchen privileges soon enough. It seemed that Helen had invited all of Dysonville to her home. She floated among the guests as if on air until Polly arrived. Helen, I'm here, Polly boomed across the lawn. Hi, Polly. Yes, I see you're here. I know Doris invited you, Helen replied less than enthusiastically. Well, Doris actually said that maybe this could be a party for you and me, as well as for Alice and Joe. A party for us. What do you think? Have you changed your mind about Doris? Helen asked sarcastically. Actually, in some ways. Have you? Polly responded. Well, of course not, Helen answered, frowning. So, Polly stirred her drink with her finger and smiled. You already know. Know what, Polly? Helen asked. Really, this is getting to be a bore, and I have other guests. Polly stopped stirring and looked directly at Helen. I don't know, Helen. I've never thought of kidnapping as boring. Helen stopped, dropped her beer, mug and all. Polly, come here. She pulled her to the side of the yard, out of sight of the party. What are you talking about? Kidnapping, Helen, the kind that Doris, the love of your life, was involved in. Polly, why are you bringing this up now? You know all about it, Helen whispered. Yes, so Doris told me. Doris told you? You talked to Doris? Helen realized how loudly she was talking and lowered her voice. You talked to Doris about Ohio? How did you even know, and what business is it of yours? I know, because it was written up in the Times. I saw an old article at the Dysonville Library. You might want to steal that issue. And I care, because now she'll have to leave you. She's already admitted as much. What? What, Polly? Helen ducked into the house just in time to drop to the ground in disbelief. Polly was about to follow, but stopped when she saw Doris coming into the room. Sweetie, what's wrong? Oh my God, are you okay? Doris was on the ground beside Helen, holding her head. Yes, physically, I guess. Helen sat up, then stood up, leaning on the wall. Oh my God, Doris, she knows. Polly knows about Ohio. Doris almost fell herself. She hadn't expected to have to talk about any of this with Helen until much later. She told me that would keep that to herself. She would keep that to herself until after the party, Doris said in an annoyed tone. After? Why? And you knew? Since when exactly? For Helen, none of this was making sense. Polly saw a newspaper article at the library yesterday, of all things. She confronted me right away. I asked her to keep quiet until after the party. I just wanted to enjoy this without her poison, Doris replied emphatically and felt her stomach clench at her choice of words. Helen suddenly realized what a problem this really was. Now what? She knows. Is she just going to keep it to herself? Doris looked at Helen. She felt the tears rise. No, unless I told her I would leave after the party. Leave again? No way, Helen answered in angry disbelief. You're right. No way, Doris replied emphatically. Then what? Just ignore her? Knowing what she knows? Helen asked. I don't think we can afford to do that, Doris answered. Then what, Doris? What other answer is there? Would she really turn you in, really? What do you think? I think we need to talk to her. We may be out of time for that, was all that Doris said. She was lost in thought. Chapter 27. Doris had watched carefully as Helen measured the poisonous sap that she squeezed and scraped from the oleander branches she had pruned. It had taken some time, but Doris had gathered the right amount, saving it in an old china coffee cup that no one ever looked for, let alone used. With gloves, she scraped the sap into a martini glass. She cut a lemon and squeezed about a quarter on top. To this she added generous vodka, a little more vermouth than usual, and a bit of lemon zest. It smelled wonderful. She stirred the concoction and hid the drink carefully in the back of the very full fridge. She threw away the gloves and hid the coffee cup under the kitchen bookshelf, intending to clean it thoroughly later. When she returned to the party, she ran into Polly almost immediately. Polly smiled a vengeful and superior smile. You just couldn't do it, could you, Polly? Doris whispered loudly. All you had to do was keep quiet about Brogdon until after the party. Why? You're a kidnapper, Doris. You want me to keep quiet? Are you kidding? Helen more than ever needs to be rid of you, Polly replied. I'm leaving, Polly. Did you forget that part? Doris realized that she'd become a pretty good liar. Oh no, I haven't forgotten. Are you leaving tonight or in the morning? No later. Polly was ecstatic now. I've won, Doris. You're gone. And not to silver this time. Gone. Leave Helen alone forever. She was whispering so adamantly that she was spitting her words. Helen walked through the next room and couldn't help but overhear. She immediately turned. Helen, are you feeling better? Polly asked, recovering her demeanor. I'm sorry I upset you. Helen looked at Polly in disbelief. Upset me? What did you expect? She pulled Doris and Polly into the living room. Everyone else was on the lawn. Now listen, you two, she turned to Polly, don't even talk to each other. The idea that you would try to blackmail Doris into leaving me with this old story? Old story, Polly interrupted. Helen, she's a black lesbian kidnapper. Polly was whispering loudly. Look what she's done to you, to your life. You're an accomplice to everything she is. Why can't you see that? Doris ran from the room in tears. Polly. Helen grabbed Polly's arm. I don't want you talking to Doris. Not at all. Do you understand that? Not a word. Get out of here. Go home or go have a drink. Just get out of my sight. Helen pushed her away. Polly regained her balance and left for the lawn, a look of self-assurance and satisfaction on her face and in her walk. Helen went to the kitchen and opened the freezer. She had pre-measured amounts of oleander sap ready for baking. It took time to gather enough for even one muffin. She was careful not to waste it. She melted a small plastic-wrapped square of sap in the microwave, just long enough for it to ooze slowly. Using gloves and a plastic knife, she scraped the sap into a martini glass. She threw away the plastic wrap, knife, and gloves. They landed on top of Doris's discarded gloves. She wondered why a second pair was there, but the thought hardly registered. To the sap in the glass, Helen added lemon juice and rind, generous gin, vermouth, and a few unintended tears. She added one small cube of ice and placed the drink in the back of a never-used cupboard. Helen and Doris wandered among their guests. Every once in a while, they glanced at each other as if to say, you look nervous, but neither asked, engrossed in her own thoughts. Later in the evening, Doris found Helen in the kitchen, doors closed, moving quietly. Helen was holding 2 martinis. Well, who has you making their drinks for them? Doris asked. Helen jumped, barely saving the precious brew. God, Doris, you scared me, she said, putting down the glasses. Helen, are you okay? Helen pulled Doris closer to her and said very quietly, we have to kill her, Doris. There's no other way. The drink, it's for Polly. Tears were flowing now. I made a drink for her. It will do the job. Helen looked at Doris, waiting for the alarm, disgust, disbelief, something, but all she saw was a blank stare. Doris opened the refrigerator and removed the drink she had made earlier. Not if this one does first, she said. There were no tears. Doris, what are we doing? Helen was holding onto the counter. This had all made sense in her head, but now, saying it out loud, and Doris having the same idea? Great minds think alike, Doris suggested calmly. Doris, really? She's going to turn me in, Helen, even if I leave town. You know it. I could go to jail. I can't leave you and go to jail. I know, but this? Yes, this. Apparently you think it's the only answer as well. Doris was straining to keep her emotions under control. She had practiced. She wasn't going to let Polly's bitterness and malice ruin the rest of her life with Helen. She had thought for 2 days of nothing else. She had hardened herself. Polly was doing so much harm, and she was never going to stop. But for Helen, this was new. A sudden impulse fueled by anger and frustration. Helen couldn't keep her thoughts in check. Her head was swimming. She shifted from thoughts of Polly as a child to the somewhat comforting idea of being rid of her forever. This is crazy, Doris, Helen finally said. She went toward the sink to pour out the drinks. Honey, I understand, Doris said. Helen stopped and turned. What? I understand if you can't go through with this, but please know that I can, and I'm going to. I can't live with her bigotry, with her angry, hurtful words any longer. She is hurting me and she is hurting you. This has to end. Can you see any other way? If you can, please. No, Doris, I don't see any other way. If she talks, you're gone. It's as simple as it gets. Helen swallowed. She thought she might throw up or faint, or both. She put down the drinks, splashed water on her face, shook herself from head to toe, took a deep breath and said, I won't let you do this alone. Suddenly she reached for Doris's arm. Wait, Doris, we need a plan. Whose drink do we use? And where? She can't just croak in the middle of the living room rug. Why not? Doris asked, actually grinning. Because, Helen looked at her and frowned, because we'll be standing over her with drinks and she'll be surrounded by what's left of 2 poisoned glasses. How will that look? Okay, I see that. Then where? Where what? It was Alice. Hi, Mom. Double-fisted drinking, you two? It's good I don't like martinis or I'd take them off your hands. Doris and Helen looked at each other and laughed nervously. You okay, Mom? Alice asked, smiling. Yes, dear, Helen responded, trying in vain for a calm and steady voice. Just a little too much celebration. Maybe we need to rethink the double-fisted thing. But it's so much fun, Doris added, toasting the air with both glasses, distracting Alice. Helen smiled weakly and pulled Doris toward the kitchen. That was too close, Helen whispered. What if Alice had taken one of those drinks from us? Oh my God, Doris, we have to be more careful. Listen, Helen, just listen and calm down, Doris insisted. Helen is fine. Here's what we do. The two left the kitchen through the back door and walked quietly around the side of the house. From a distance, they looked about as suspicious as 2 people could, skulking around in the dark. No one saw. They looked for Polly and spotted her sitting at the lily pond. Helen and Doris looked at each other as if to say in unison, the pond. Then Helen noticed that both of them still held 2 glasses. They had never made a choice after dealing with Alice's sudden appearance. Helen whispered, Doris, oh my God, 2 drinks each. What are we doing? Competing? Okay, that works, Doris replied calmly. We'll just tell her we have a contest for her to settle. She'll love that. We'll tell her that we just can't decide who made the best drink. You know she'll down both. Oh my God, that way we'll never know who killed her, Helen exclaimed. Okay, sweetie, that's a little loud, Doris looked at Helen. Can't you just see her? Doris laughed, looking at the glasses, smelling them like she's tasting fine wine. Doris, please, was all that Helen could say. The two found Polly still sitting on the pond's edge. I've always loved this pond, Helen. Polly looked up and smiled as the 2 women approached. She met only Helen's eyes. It's such a beautiful spot to sit and just look around. Helen felt like she was in the middle of a dream. Doris woke her, announcing confidently, Polly, we have a surprise for you. We both think we made the best martini ever. We want you to decide. Helen felt faint again. She sat down beside Polly. Polly reached for the 2 glasses. Now wait, Doris stopped her, causing Helen to jump. First, remember that these are new recipes. Don't be put off by the first sip. It tastes a little different from what you're used to. She tried her own. Okay, Polly said impatiently, but wondered now what Doris's game was. She drank. Wow, that's lemony. And what's that bitterness? Polly asked as the vodka swept over her. That's just the lemon rind. I like it. Try again, Doris suggested. She did. Helen looked away. Doris touched Helen's shoulder for support. Okay, now Helen, she said. Polly drank and winced at the taste of gin. Gin? Polly felt dizzy. Yes, gin, Doris replied, as if Polly had won a prize. You enjoy that, Polly. Alice is calling us, Helen. She pulled Helen away. Doris led Helen straight across the lawn and through the porch. By the time they reached the house, all they could hear was a faint splash followed by, oh my God, somebody fell in the lily pond. Come quick. Oh, it's Polly. Polly, Polly. Helen was running across the lawn, followed by Doris, Alice, and Joe. It sounds like Polly fell in the lily pond, Alice was laughing. Wow, how drunk is she? By the time the 4 of them arrived, the scene had entirely changed. Polly had been taken out of the water and was lying on the ground. Helen fell down beside her crying. Doris noticed the glasses, broken, in the bottom of the pond. Perfect, she thought. I'll stop there.